Last week we had a lighting tutorial in one of the classes that I teach. One of my students came up to me and showed me a photograph and basically asked me, how is it that I go about taking a photo like this? So I looked at that photo and I was like, you know what? I actually need a new photo for my website. It's been a while since I've updated it, and so it's about time I do that. And also, this photo is kind of cool. It would almost make a good YouTube video. So that's what today's video is about. I'm gonna be doing a photo shoot with myself, Kayla, Maya, and Luca, a few friends of mine, and we're gonna have a little bit of fun. Now here are the problems I'm foreseeing with the studio space that we have. Number one is, it's not very big. So in order to get that pitch black background, we're gonna have to play with the lighting a little bit. Two, the backdrop that I actually have a backdrop up there, which is what we're gonna be using, is not black either, it's actually darker gray. I'm thinking that with a little bit of Photoshop though, a little bit of Lightroom, that might actually be fixable as well. We'll see. We'll just fix it in post. And the last problem I'm foreseeing is actually the camera. I'm gonna be shooting all of these on my camera, the GH5. And the problem with that is really the lighting to trigger the flashes. You know, at the end of the day, the GH5 is a video camera. And so I actually had to rent some continuous lights in order to make that work with my particular camera. Let's get to it. So for the lighting setup, we have the 1000-watt Lumahawk LED panels on either side. These are essentially pointing at the back of whoever's in front of the camera, and it's giving them that very nice halo that looks very professional. So in this case, it's Kayla. Hi, Kayla.
Hi.
You'll be seeing some other photos with Luca and Maya. There's no light on you, unfortunately. You look really dark. There she is. In order to give some depth to whoever is being photographed, we have this soft light here with a grid. That way we have a little bit more directionality with where the light is hitting, which allows us to have that very dark background and a very moody look for our model.
Sorry, I really agree with what he was saying. It was really good.
So we've taken a few pictures, we've made some mistakes, we've changed some things up, and now we're really trying to recreate that first photo that I showed you, with the small twist, of course, that our gear and room is different than the one that that photographer used. And when you're working in a small room, you really have to be careful with the lighting. I want to get that really dramatic look, very bright on one side with sort of like somewhat harsh shadows, but the issue I was having is most of the walls in this room are white. So if I actually pointed these lights directly at the wall, you would get that bounce, and then the effect was being lost. So the way I overcame this when working in a small room is to get the lights as close to your subject as possible so you don't actually have to brighten them up all the way, and you still get a very harsh light, for example for the halo. And even the Aputure 120D, which is my soft light, the key light on my face, is fairly close. Here, let me show you the setup. Now here, this is the point of view of the camera that's shooting the photos. I'll put a few examples here. You'll notice that the lights are actually in the shot. Now, of course, this isn't ideal, but it is much easier to remove using Photoshop than it is to actually get the intensity working in this small room. So due to these constraints, we're gonna have to continue this in Lightroom and Photoshop. Welcome to my editing suite. Right off the bat, I wanted to say that my post-production actually ended up being pretty mild. The photos don't look exactly like my reference, but considering the limitations, I'm actually super proud of the results. We ended up going a little crazy with the photo shoot, so I'm just gonna show one photo per person and talk a little bit about what I did in Lightroom. This photo of Luca is clearly the closest to my reference photo. The lights were actually not behind him for this shot. This was one of the earlier ones that we did. And you can kind of tell based on how the light is hitting his face, the lights were actually to either side of his body. I later changed the lighting setup a little bit to try to get that halo from behind and not so much from the side, because it was overexposing people's faces a bit too much and not having a very nice soft look on the face, which was more like the reference photo. As far as post-production goes, you can see it's pretty minimal. I added a little bit of contrast. I raised the shadows a lot, and I messed around a little bit with the tone curve. Again, pretty minimal. But here's before and after my edit. And since this one ended up being the closest to the reference photo, here is a shot of the reference photo and a side-by-side with this shot of Luca. All things considered, I'm pretty happy with it. The fact that I had to use continuous lighting actually ended up being sort of a blessing because the size of the room is so small. Having had triggered lights would have eventually been a problem because I can't have lights that are that bright without having them bounce all over the room. Further down the line, I'll remake this video in a bigger room, and that's gonna be a ton of fun. But for now, this is the result and I'm super happy with it. So up next is a photo of Kayla. So if I remember correctly, we actually ended up turning off one of the backlights for this photo and had that backlight, we kind of wanted it to be more of a hair light. There's still a lot of light on her arm, which you can tell. This is pretty similar to the reference photo, but I wanted her hair on the other side of her face to sort of get lost into the background in order to have a light, dark sort of feel to this photo. As far as editing goes, I actually went a little bit heavier on this one. I softened her skin on her face, I desaturated her eyes, and I also brightened them a little bit. I added a little bit of minimal saturation to her skin as well as to her lips. And here is a side-by-side with the raw photo and the editing in Lightroom. I went a little bit heavier on this photo because when comparing it to the previous photo, this photo of Luca, this one just looked so rugged, Nike athlete that I didn't really want to soften his skin. I wanted those pores to actually be very visible, as that grit to be part of the photo. Whereas with Kayla, I wanted to go for more of an Instagram look, more of a softer aesthetic, and I think it works well considering these photos. Up next is Maya. Now, for Maya, we actually took a ton of backlit photos, but there's one photo that was so good that I'm gonna put it in this video anyways. It has nothing to do with backlit photography, but just look at this photo. This might be one of my favorite photos that I've ever taken, which is why I'm just like saying, F all the rules. I'm gonna put that in this video. Just look at the intensity in her eyes. Just, oh, it's amazing. I love it, at least. I don't mean to pride myself. It's actually, she's the one who did a great job. It's just amazing. I'm so happy with the result. Here's a before and after, super minimal editing. Did I even edit this photo? I did. I don't know why it's not showing here right now. I added a little bit of contrast. I think that's really all I did. I might have moved the brightness a little bit. Love this photo. Anyways, last photo. Now, you might remember at the top of this video, I said this.
I actually need a new photo for my website.
So I was really looking for the best photo for my website. And ultimately, the one I chose was... It needs to be a little bit more intense. How about this? Yup, keeping the lights and everything. I just figured it fit with like the photography, videography brand, and it'll work well for my website, for my resume, for whatever black thing I decide to make. I spent a little bit more time on this one because the lights weren't symmetrical right off the bat. And if I was gonna keep the lights in the shot, I would want them to look good, look symmetrical. I lowered the whites and the highlights on the light so you can actually see the individual LEDs. And here's a before and after of this shot. As far as this one goes, I actually went quite crazy on the exposure because I was very dark in the photo to begin with. Then I lowered the blacks, dehazed, declaritized. I lowered the clarity and I increased a little bit of the texture, and you can see here a little bit of what I did with the tone curve. Again, pretty minimal except for all the Photoshop repositioning and darkening the black background. Anyways, that is all for this video. If you like these photos and you want to see more of them, I will slowly be releasing them on my Instagram. You can follow me at johncastillo.ca. Also, feel free to drop a comment, hit subscribe, hit the bell. I mean, we're all locked at home for the next 2 weeks anyway, so might as well keep in touch, make the most of it. Stay safe, everyone. See you in the next video. Peace.